So I've got my little questions. So here we go. Okay, so the first question is, my blood pressure is 100/70. Is this too low? This is a pretty common thing, a pretty common theme amongst many people with cardiovascular disease, because a lot of you are on blood pressure medication. So that blood pressure medication, like ramipril, like some of the beta blockers, metoprolol, bisoprolol, all of those types of medications, you're on it because your blood pressure was high, and now your blood pressure is being reduced and sort of held at a minimum because of the medication. And then because of your awesome diet that you've got going on and the exercise that you're doing now, your body is naturally lowering that blood pressure as well. So it can be that over time, in combination of your medications as well as all the awesome factors you're doing on terms of your lifestyle, that blood pressure can get a little bit low. So back to this 100/70. Typically, a textbook blood pressure would be about 120/70, but the lower the better, to be honest. There's no real too low as long as you're not getting symptoms. And those symptoms could be that you're getting dizzy, fainty, really short of, or not short of breath necessarily, but really fatigued is what I'm trying to say. So any of those types of symptoms where you go to stand up and all of a sudden you're like, woo, I'm getting a little dizzy, any of those things that make you feel just not quite right, and you're noticing that your blood pressure is a little bit on the lower side, that is when I would recommend you go and talk to your doctor, because it may be that it's time for you to get that dosage reduced a little bit in terms of your blood pressure medication. If that's not available, if that means that your doctor's saying, no, I think you need to stay on this, there are certain things that you can do to help to support that blood pressure a little bit better, such as taking in more water. So the more water or fluid we take in, the more fluid volume, blood volume we're going to get in our body. And if we increase, like turning up the tap on a garden hose, if we increase that overall blood volume, that will help to support that blood pressure just a little bit more. Okay, so trying to do things like that, and then recognizing if you are the type of person that when you get up quickly that you are going to get a little bit fainty, a little bit dizzy, then recognize that and take your time. So we're heading into gardening season soon, and I know there's lots of you that love to do the gardening, but that also means you're down playing in the dirt and then standing up quickly. So just recognize that and try and take your time. So give yourself a bit of a pause, especially first thing in the morning. It's something where if you're sitting on the side of the bed, you go from laying down all night, sit yourself on the side of the bed, and just give yourself a second before you step up and head towards the washroom or whatever you're doing. So just recognize that a little bit. Okay. The other thing I wanted to touch on in terms of the blood pressure is just understanding that why that's important, why keeping your blood pressure low is important in the first place, and what your doctors and everybody are trying to do to try and help that reduce that higher blood pressure. So if your blood pressure is sitting up in a little bit of higher zone, so anything over 135/90 or kind of and above is what we would consider high blood pressure. And so if your blood pressure is up there consistently over a long period of time, it can start to really wreak havoc and cause irritation on the inside lining of those coronary arteries. Now remember, those coronary arteries are the ones that sit on top of your heart and they feed your heart muscle itself, okay? So if our pressure is high over a long period of time, every time your heart beats, it's pumping along the inside lining of those coronary arteries. And if it's a high pressure system, it's really causing a lot of friction and irritation there. Heart disease as a whole is an inflammatory disease. So what that means is as those arteries get inflamed and annoyed from all that pressure, it means they're more likely to develop plaque. It's more likely that that plaque is going to find a little micro cut or micro tear in those arteries, get in behind that layer or that first lining, and start to develop a little bit of a narrowing and potentially a clot altogether. So that's why we want to keep that blood pressure low. And also for those of you that have a weaker heart pump, so for example, if your ejection fraction is low, you have heart failure, even though I don't like saying that word, meaning that it's just harder for your heart to pump forward. If that blood pressure is kept nice and low, it's easier on your heart. So you can imagine your heart no longer has to push through this high pressure system. That pressure is nice and low, so it's easier for your heart to push forward. So it just makes it the workload on your heart to come down a little bit. Okay, really long-winded answer to that very simple question. But no, 100 over 70 is not too low. We do see people in the 80s, over 60, over 50. And as long as you're not getting symptoms like I talked about, that dizziness, fatigue, any of that, then that's okay. If you are, then talk to your doctor and try and drink some more water and take your time when you're moving around.